Today on Ship Chasing, our scariest fades in underdog drafts. Not necessarily the guys we are going out of our way not to select, but the ones that are a bit more accidental. We just haven't ended up with these guys. And now we are certainly worried about them burying us this year. This is Ship Chasing with Pete, Ben, and Pat.
Pat Fryer Helmo.
This is why I'm hot.
Anita Handjob.
Fix your sight.
Jamar. Alpha play chase.
Are you kidding me? Scariest Tony?
You can't handle the heat.
It looks like we're finally Piss Boys. You're right.
I couldn't believe this. Michael Dubner did a free That's Fair pocket t-shirt giveaway because Dubner had won a gift card for winning the Deposit Kingdom March Madness bracket. He wanted to pay it forward, give an ADP chasing viewer the shirt, and a two-time FFPC $1 million winner.
No shit.
The shirt.
He won it?
He won it. Yeah.
He won it.
These guys run so fucking pure. The luckiest fucks in the world.
Rich, the shirt was That's Fair. Everyone's like, that's not fair.
You know what? If I had more time, I should have definitely have had another shirt made that said "That's not fair," a 1 of 1 that got sent.
We got sent to us, yeah.
That's great.
Oh my goodness. GMs all around in the chat today. What is up, guys? Yeah, make sure you guys check out ADP Chasing this week. Very fun episode with Jacob Sanderson. Just all kinds of great moments and really actionable information there. And I should also mention Sanderson is going to be my guest of honor on the randomizer tonight.
Beautiful.
We all know that Jacob's like an interesting dude, but the more research I did for prompts and stuff about him, and I know Gretch, you saw some of that stuff with his, Canadian.
Did you just find that?
Yeah. I mean, I had kind of heard rumblings about it, but then the research team, the randomizer research team unearthed all of this stuff. I'm ready to call Jacob the most interesting man in fantasy. This dude contains multitudes.
Where did this come from? I mean, what I know about him is he's a pretty young dude. He just finished law school. He can't read signs in airports correctly and flies to the wrong city. I didn't know that this guy was like.
He's well traveled in the U.S. Yeah,
on a game show called Canada's Smartest Person or something, and was like almost a winner on it. Was like leading in the final round. I read the whole wiki page of his episode. Like I don't know what the clips are, but I read all about the episode. That is a fascinating thing. He was 18 on a game show.
What does it say about Canada's Smartest Person that they can't even go to the right gate at an airport?
Oh,
no. not a great look for Canada, guys.
Tough seed. Canada, tough seed. We love you, Jacob. And I should also mention there was a very funny clip where Sam was talking about sprinkling in a little bit of Justin Fields to his portfolio. Which Pat had a very funny reaction to. And then Jacob went on this rant about 4% exposure just being this false security blanket. So our guy, Zach Lanners, made a clip, and then I naturally went and had to make an actual 4% exposure blanket.
I called, as if you were watching live, I called out, Pete, we need this. And then here it is.
It's actually available for purchase. It says 4% exposure, and then the site I use for my merch allows me to pick some stock photos, and I just had to do this kid wrapped in 4%.
So good.
4%
so good.
Jacob's demanding royalties on there. So far I have $0 in CAD to send. Oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
All right. So like I said, I think for today, we were thinking it would be fun to talk about the scariest fades. I think a lot of us have talked a lot about the targets we like, the guys we're going after. We've talked a lot about elite tight end, all these profiles we like. But now that we have a decent amount of drafts under our belt, I think it's fun to go around and look at the guys we haven't been selecting, not so much intentionally, but almost accidentally. And I think that's also where there's fun conversations, is why we're not getting to these guys. But what do you guys think about this, of kind of going through these players we maybe wish we had a little bit more of?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. And you guys were kind of going through yours, and we're making the comment that it really is kind of about structure. to a large degree, and it can also be about player targets, where I'm taking a ton of Mark Andrews, and wouldn't you know it, I don't have any of the players that go near Mark Andrews. It's kind of like that. And I made a point at one point to say, I've got to take some more Trey McBride. I don't want to be directionally accurate on this bet that the elite tight ends are mispriced and then not have any Trey McBride. So I corrected that, but it can be difficult to correct this stuff where it's like, I'm not targeting 4th, 5th round running back is a key to this season. And so then I might end up like too low on someone that I actually kind of like in that range.
Yeah. So why don't we? Oh, go ahead, Gretch. Go for that.
Well, no, I just think it's a really good concept. We talked about like the Jalen Reagor, Justin Jefferson thing before, right? Like you just made that reference with the Andrews thing. For some reason, earlier today, I was thinking back to the year where I barely had any Cooper Kupp, but at the end of the year, I got that was the year Cooper Kupp absolutely exploded. I got several Stealing Signal subscribers that were stoked that I got them on Cooper Kupp, and I was like, I wish, I had him some places, but the main place that I had him was in Scott Fishbowl, hella good Scott Fishbowl. But I was taking a ton of DJ Moore. That's what I just thought of, Pat, when you said the Mark Andrews thing. It was at this turn where I was just taking.
I did this
DJ
too.
Moore
I took
in
a ton of
every
DJ
draft
Moore that year. Yeah.
Yeah. But I was writing, if you were breaking down the Rams, that I thought Kupp, because Woods would go slightly ahead of Kupp. We famously had Crack Rock on, and he made us take Woods over Kupp. And I remember writing multiple times that offseason, this is the thing that people were referencing, that if you were going to take one of them, if one was going to separate, it was going to be Kupp. He had some more meat on the bone on his targets per run profile, all that stuff. And it's one of those things that you fall into those holes where you're doing everything a certain way. You're taking certain players in certain pockets and not taking other ones. The other thing I was going to say is there's a couple different kinds of fades. And this is a really interesting one where we're talking about our scariest fades. When I went through the ADP list to make my list for this show, there was several that I haven't drafted that I was like, I have conviction in those. I don't want to draft those. That's a whole different conversation.
That's a different conversation.
Right. And so that's interesting as well, but that's not what we're going to be talking about today. But yeah, it is interesting to think through whether a fade is intentional or is somebody that you are just not getting because you're too on other players in that range, and whether you should mix that up and how to approach that.
And I actually want to do, we've had our fair share on the show when we've done a draft or something, and we're all, answering it or approaching it with a different definition. I'm already seeing crazy stuff. Why is anyone fading Pacheco? Talk through why you're fading Devon. This is exactly what we're going to do, guys. Right. And to Ben's point, the goal wasn't to be none of us like Michael Pittman at his price. We're not taking him. These are often guys we would love to have in our portfolio. It's we're prioritizing other things, either other players or other structures that don't allow us to get to these guys. This is why we're conflicted on them. This is why they're scary fades.
Yeah, I'm not taking any Saquon. I timed out in that Dalmatian. I forgot that I signed up. I missed my first 2 picks, and I got Saquon Barkley. You're like, oh wait, okay, I remembered. I'm here. And they're like, you've just won Saquon Barkley. I'm like, God damn it. That's not a fade I'm feeling scary about. I'm fading Saquon. I don't think he belongs in the second round. I'm fading him. I'm fading Michael Pittman. I don't think he belongs in the third round. I'm fading him. I'm fading Pacheco, but not because I love the idea of fading Pacheco. It's because I don't think he's a huge priority in the 4th round. And I do think that Mark Andrews is a priority. I do think that Trey McBride is a really good pick at the end of the 4th. If he falls to the late 4th, I'm taking him. I think getting the chance to get a Jalen Hurts in the late 4th, a Lamar Jackson sometimes in the late 4th that you can then potentially pair with Andrews. Dalton Kincaid, I'm probably taking more in the 5th, but that starts to become a question. If Pacheco falls to the 5th and Kincaid's there, do I take Kincaid or do I take Pacheco? I've taken Kincaid sometimes. Sometimes I'm already behind at receiver. If you've got Christian McCaffrey, and then you feel like I can't take Pacheco here. Not that you can't, but it's not the most comfy click. Especially I have some McCaffrey HN builds. Pacheco falls to me in the 5th. I'm not taking him. I feel behind at receiver. I'm going to grab a Keenan Allen or something like that and try not to fall too far behind at wide receiver. So that's kind of where the Pacheco one's coming from. But I have this article coming out. It's done. I'm editing it. It'll be out later today. on the early round running backs through the top 60 picks. And Pacheco was one where I came away feeling pretty good about like his profile. Not that he's like an absolute smash, but that it's a pretty strong profile for the price. I went through, I said, for all the running backs in the early rounds, can we get this talent profile later? And I was like, sort of, you could kind of say like it's a Zamir White-ish talent profile, thinner resume, but it's not, kind of a 2-down bet on efficiency. Brian Robinson, seen as a plotter, not such a plotter. Maybe his rushing efficiency improves with Jane Daniels, but like at the same time, he is like a pretty solid bet for what he's shown, and he's on the Chiefs, which you don't get with the other two. And I asked, is this price a historical anomaly? Absolutely. He's the type of back who used to require a top 15 pick. He's a young back, great offense, highly projectable role. I noted Miles Sanders in 2020 was at the 1-2 turn, coming off an inefficient rushing season. And then I asked what the wide receiver opportunity cost was. Still high with Pacheco, but it is trailing off. And I just ended up feeling like, yeah, I would like to. I think this is one where I want to turn this into not a fade. So talk through the fade. I don't want this to be a fade. I actually want to get slightly overweight on Pacheco. I'm going to have to work to do that a little bit, but I want to end up slightly overweight on Pacheco if this price holds, is where I landed.
This 4-5 turn is really hard because I think all of us are prioritizing elite tight end in this range. And on top of that, you have some of the falling quarterback fallers. I've grabbed ETN at the 4-5 turn when he falls there.
Yep.
And so someone gets like squeezed there. And like Pacheco, for whatever reason, doesn't seem to fall like Jacobs falls, like Rashad White falls, like Joe Mixon falls. And so he's been an odd man out for me too. Gretch, are you getting any Pacheco?
I'm not. And I put a different running back in this range on my list because I think you guys both had Pacheco on yours. And I was like, we don't need him on all of ours, but it's kind of, I put Josh Jacobs there on mine. It's kind of structural thing as well that would relate to Pacheco and Jacobs. But I mean, I agree with you guys on this. Like, I think he's very draftable. One of the things about the structural things that I try to think through and I want to talk through as we go through all of our fades and everything in these ranges is you can be right on some of this stuff, but if we're right about the structural things, it doesn't matter. You're still not going to win with the Pacheco thing because Pacheco can be the right pick, but the 2v2 can still be wrong, right? Like if there's so many good running backs later and receiver really does fall off, if the elite tight end thing is right. I mean, we talked about this last year with the dead zone running backs, and they hit in a way that it didn't matter. It didn't matter if there was receivers in that range that were good or anything. That was where you needed to be taking running backs, and you were going to be way ahead of the game. The structural stuff really does take away whether the player hit is even relevant at that price. Like, I mean, Pacheco. So I don't think I'm going to get to overweight on Pacheco because I do believe the structural stuff pretty strongly. Pat's right that the wide receiver opportunity cost starts to fall off, but I still want to be getting my fourth receiver before my first running back. If we're talking about that range, if I've already taken a tight end, maybe, and Pacheco's still there in the fifth, but I took a tight end in the fourth, I have three receivers. Like even though that receiver stuff started to fall off, I want to get that receiver 4 in the fifth round before taking any running back, whether that's Pacheco, whether that's Jacobs, because I know that I can get so much. I do think the profile is pretty replaceable later. I guess maybe not the actual skill set, but as you were talking through it, but the scoring profile for fantasy is going to be a team that leads the NFL in pass rate over expected. Probably they have like 5 years in a row. He's going to catch passes because of that, but he's not going to run 300 times. He had 205 carries last year, only 14 games, but I mean, not like a monster rushing workload. He'll catch some passes. He'll score TDs, but there's those types of profiles in the 8th and 9th round that are like not that different. Yeah. So it's tricky. The structural stuff is so tricky.
Yeah.
Like if let's say every tight end except Kittle and Pitts, let's say Kittle and Pitts go where they do. And let's say every other tight end was off the board by 4-6, middle of the fourth round. Like how much Pacheco would we have then? When you're back at that 4-5 turn, you start with 3 wide receivers. You're coming around. You're like, this is normally when I take elite tight end. Boom. They're all gone. Now you're like, all right, the running back sets up. Someone already took Travis Etienne. It's like, man, Pacheco starts to look really good. These tight ends are off the board. I have 3 straight wide receivers. My anchor right there in the late 4th, Pacheco, bam, that's a slam. But then I'm like, Dalton Kincaid's here. Mark Andrews here. Like, it's really hard.
It's tough. And
it is really hard.
There's a couple round 5 receivers for me that I would say would also need to be gone. But like Keenan Allen has fallen into round 5 now. He's fallen even further, which I didn't understand his price at the beginning. But like I thought it was a good price compared to DJ Moore. And then Xavier Worthy is like at the 5-6 turn. But if you get those guys gone and you get into like the Calvin Ridley, Chris Godwin group of receiver, I would smash Pacheco at that point. So it really is just like, it's like 8 to 10 picks. I just need him to fall a little more, and I would take the hell out of him.
Yeah. No, and I think like I would like to be overweight on him, but odds are I don't end up getting there because I think he rises. And this is another reason why it's a scary fade to me, because you're saying, hey, here's a guy you can get in the early 5th. It's going to end up going in the early 4th. And you're saying, I don't care. He's the Chiefs' leading running back. He has no competition for touches. CEH and a rugby player are his competition for touches. It is nuts. And he showed a ceiling at the end of last season. He showed a legit weekly ceiling. He's fast. He's big enough. He does everything sufficiently well. Andy Reid has a long history of getting really good running back production out of his offense. Like, I don't want to feel sick to my stomach that I didn't take this dude at a round discount when he ends up smashing. Like that's kind of what it is. So I want to be, if he's at this price all summer, I want to be overweight. If he doesn't, I would like to at least get close to even before he rises and he ends up being a fade. Because I'm much more comfortable fading him at the, he could end up, as ADP shifts, right? We're talking about late August ADP. He could end up going behind Tank Dell. I know that seems kind of nuts now, but Dell falls to the mid 4th and Pacheco comes up to the early 4th. I think that's pretty plausible. So at that price, like, no, I'm not taking Pacheco like ever. But I would kind of hate to arrive at that point in time with no Pacheco, which could happen unless I change things up a little bit.
I know. I don't think I've drafted him once. I haven't drafted Josh Jacobs once.
Because the other thing too,
like 0 times,
is also you're thinking through like, and I just did a video on the Deposit Kingdom last night, kind of like my 10 takeaways through 50 drafts. And, a lot of people have echoed this, and anecdotally, it's been so true to me. Like, I want at least 4 wide receivers through 7 rounds. And a lot of the stuff that happens at the 4 or 5 turn, like you can get that Lamar Andrews stack. You can set stuff up like that. You sometimes in the 3rd, if you get, say, like a Bijan or a Breece Hall, and then all of a sudden that's the draft where Kyron or Achane falls into the mid to late 3rd. And you're like, fuck, I'm grabbing that. And I'm getting my elite tight end. Boom. There's 3 of your first 7 picks already. Every other pick has to go to wide receiver for you to not fall behind.
And those are great points because I'm not getting enough Achane. Like, I'm drafting him and I'm drafting Kyron, but those guys are still like, there's other running back prices in the first 7 rounds that I like more than this for Isaiah.
Yeah. And that's another part of it for me, is that Achane is a priority for me. Achane is tied with being my highest drafted player. I'm drafting him a lot. But then if I have Achane and I take a tight end, as you're saying, like now it's round 5 and Pacheco falls, it's wide receiver 3 or running back 2 with an elite tight end. I'm going wide receiver 3 most of the time.
Well, I don't know where I'm at on Achane, but this round, I looked at my exposures after my first round drafts and I was about even with the field, and I was like, that's a mistake. And I've made a point to draft a bunch more of him. So we'll see when I finish all these drafts up. But I'm with you. That's a priority for me. And I've taken a lot of Kyron as well, who I think is
I think Kyron's a good pick now in the 3rd.
Yeah. It's just when you get those guys on a roster, you can't take another running back before the 8th round. You just you can't take 2 running backs early this year. Or at least I feel I can't.
I want to just pull this because I included this team in that video when I was talking about how like the falling running backs and the 4 wide receivers through 7. And this is a team Pat and I drafted. And we started Tyreek Hill, Debo. We grabbed Achane at 27. Then we do the Andrews Lamar thing. And so what happens is we have to now slam wide receiver. Well, guess what happened in this draft? Both Kenneth Walker and Rachaad White, really big values, ADP values in this fall around. In another draft, if we have, say, DJ Moore here instead of Achane, we're like, yeah, let's scoop up Kenneth Walker at pick 70. That seems really nice. But when you do the Andrews, Lamar, Achane, like that's off the table. Like we said, we have to take a fucking wide receiver right now. And maybe
so in terms of trying to get in terms of trying to get more Pacheco, which as you guys are talking through this, I'm like, how do I make that work? I mean, it's got to be a 3 receiver start, and then you take him in the late 4th, and you get your tight end in the 5th. You can't take the QB pick there either. Get through 5 rounds with a tight end or running back and the big 3 receivers. Like that's the spot to take him if you can start 3 receivers in the first 2 rounds and the early 3rd. You're getting 3 receivers by the end of the Diggs tier or the end of the Malik Neighbors group or whatever. And then you can probably justify taking a running back late 4.
Yeah. The thing is though, the way to take all these guys is to not take other running backs. And so you end up you're kind of okay, I've fixed this scary fade on ETN, who's a totally fine pick in the mid 4th. And the way I did it though, was by creating a new scary fade on Jonathan Taylor.
Robbing Peter to pay Paul, running back edition.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. There's just no way to get it. I mean, that's going to be my biggest takeaway from the show. There's no way to get enough of the running back profiles in the first 7 or so rounds this year. It's just, you're going to have to take some stances. They're not going to be fun.
You are. Yeah, you're going to have to take some stances.
And this is why I think I'm slightly different in Pat. And I know you have a very strong eval on Achane. I like Achane a lot too, but I don't want to do Achane every single draft because then it precludes me from having, I want to mix up my running back fallers. I want to mix up my Achane stabs. I took Barkley in the middle of the 3rd.
That's fine. I think he's fine in the middle of the 3rd, given that he's locked into the 2nd.
Yeah. Right. And so if I had say scooped, I don't know, I'm trying to think of who would have been even if I don't know, whatever it was, but say I took Jonathan Taylor in the 2nd, and then it's Barkley's here in the fucking 3rd, man. I'm why? That trickle down effect, I feel it in every round. And I want to have stabs of that quasi anchor RB in all of those spots. So if you're always taking the first running back faller, you are going to end up with those pretty wildly disparate exposures.
And nobody wants to draft running backs anyway. I mean, it's just so much easier to draft the receivers anyway. So
yeah, and Achane, I mean, I was taking him in the 2nd pretty consistently. Kind of, there's a lot of 4% blankets in this one.
Yes.
I was drafting him pretty consistently at the end of the 2nd, but I flipped that to where I'm never taking him in the 2nd now because he so consistently goes in the 3rd, and I also have a ton of him already. So I'm all right, I'm at a point where it's 3rd round only Achane. I do take him pretty much every time that he's available in the 3rd, and I'm looking to go running back. I don't really take Kyron over him, for example. I might be willing to take Barkley over him once or twice, but most of the time I would go Achane over him. But yeah, I mean, and part of it too is when you take him in the 2nd, you're locking yourself out of that flexibility later. So I think it's better to take some of these other receivers. And to the point on one of the other fades here, Davante Adams, I've started to really feel like we're about to hit at least a month or so, because we got about a month left of just kind of real hardcore drafters only. And I think in that month there's going to be a lot of Jaylen Waddle steam. I've kind of seen the analysts. I'm not hearing a lot of pushback on Waddle, and I've kind of been wanting to be bullish on Waddle, but I'm liking the nice, what a great price on Waddle. It'll be here forever. I'll just comfortably take it. And then I'm starting to hear
one of the very first things when I did my first draft I recognized was that the market seemed to really respond to the whole discussion last year about the number 2s in the late 2nd round, which was Waddle, T. Higgins, and DeVonta Smith. And then they all didn't do very well. And I was they're all 3 rounds too cheap. To start, early on, they were all 4th, 5th round turns. T. Higgins hasn't really come up, but DeVonta crept up into the 3rd pretty quickly when I was doing my first drafts. And Waddle as well. I mean, I think he was always a little higher, and now he's creeping up to the 2nd. But I think that's all just an adjustment on that little subset of that wide receiver 2 thing that people were just overreacting to 2023 on, which we do with little groups. But I mean, Waddle belongs in the 2nd round. It's just not. I mean, that's not even a debate.
Yeah, and so he's become actually more of a priority for me when I get to that range of kind of where Adams goes, where I'm I don't want to. If Waddle ended up as the 201, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't really be surprised.
Yeah. It's so flat there. It's easy to jump. We saw Olave already do it.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you, why aren't you getting enough Adams? So is it purely Waddle? Because that seems more recent.
It's not purely Waddle. It's that I like Olave better. I like Ayuk better. I am taking some Jonathan Taylor, and I don't want to not. I take some Nico, I take some Debo, and now I'm trying to get more Waddle. And so like Adams, there's a lot of like, yeah, I'll get him next time with Davante Adams.
Yeah.
And I'm not getting the next time comes around, I do something else.
Ayuk is that guy for me because I really think that Ayuk efficiency it was incredible last year, but like I don't know where the rest of the targets are going to come from for him to be a second round pick. It's like Adams had 175 targets last year. Like I could materially look at it and say this guy had 70 more targets than this guy. I know Ayuk is really good and I don't fade efficiency, but like that we're talking about a 70 target gap last year.
Yeah, that is wild.
Yeah. So Pat, is there any, so on that Davante Adams, are you going to start going out of your way to make sure you're getting him more?
I don't know if I am. I mean, we know the way the NFL season goes that the bottom falls out on certain offenses. And it's kind of like, you're like, yeah, the answer was no, on several of these offenses. And not to say that the Raiders are destined for that. There's no chance, they could. Antonio Pierce, I think, is a pretty interesting coach. He could kind of guide them through this storm. But it is a storm. You got Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew. They fucked up quarterback this offseason. They fucked it up. I don't think they understood the position they were in. They played their hand. I don't think they understood their hand, and then they played their hand poorly. I think they didn't. I mean, no one thought the Falcons were in the quarterback market, so I think they counted wrong in the sense they thought Penix would be there at worst, and he wasn't. So, but this is kind of already sort of shaping up as a lost season because this is supposed to be the season they were working in Michael Penix or Bo Nix or JJ McCarthy, and now they're not doing that. And it's like, okay, does that mean they're going to go back to Aiden O'Connell and see if they have something there at the end of the season? Are we just kind of seeing like an offense that just is really struggling down the stretch and doesn't have any direction? So, and then you've got an older player in Adams, and I know it's like this has never not worked, but it does make me like a little nervous in the mid-second given the offensive environment.
Gretch, I was actually thinking about this one today because I was wondering when you and Sean are going to do your annual exercise of projecting next year's first and second round drafts. And I think the thing for me that resonates with Adam's stuff is I think in my head, I feel like he's more likely to be a 5th round pick next year than a 1st round pick. And I think that's what's driving a lot of
it doesn't help that Sean has him ranked as a 5th round pick now.
That's true. Yeah.
Does he really? I haven't even.
He's got him super low. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Let me pull up exactly
on that, Gretch, like an early peak, because it sounds like you're more open to Adams. Do you think
I'd take him
be a 1st round pick next year?
I don't think he could be a 1st round pick. That's it. That's a good way of thinking about it. It'll probably help me get a little bit more off of him because I've wanted to find reasons to get off him. I think the 2nd round's tough. He literally did have 175 targets last year. Pat was talking about them fucking up the quarterback thing, and I kind of made a little face because I think he's absolutely right from an organizational standpoint that they needed to be developing. But Aiden O'Connell, and this is actually, I got to give a shout out to our guy Jacobs Anderson on this, but he got me to go back and look at Aiden O'Connell's late season stuff. They had that one game where they scored 63 points against the Chargers. He threw 4 touchdowns, whatever. But then he also closed in week 17 and 18 with 2 TDs in both games, solid passing games. Antonio Pierce was the interim head coach, and the first thing he did was bench Jimmy Garoppolo and start Aiden O'Connell. And he started him the rest of the year, and then he got the full-time job this offseason. And O'Connell finished the last 4 games of the year with an 8-0 touchdown to interception ratio, like had some decent starts down the stretch, including that Chargers game, which is, again, a 4 touchdown game. The Chargers completely imploded in that game. But I think I think low-key earlier in the offseason, I thought Minshew would start. I think low-key, like O'Connell might be their guy right now, but that Minshew is actually a really competent starter that raises the floor. Now they have 2 guys. Like if O'Connell sucks, that they can just play Minshew. I think we saw that last year with the Colts. As soon as Richardson went out, Minshew kept them in games all year long. The biggest reason I was in on Adams originally was his efficiency was trash last year. really until O'Connell took over, because he did have that monster week 17. He had like a 21 target, almost 200-yard week 17, multiple touchdowns. I really think a lot of it could have been just on the efficiency side, quarterback play, and that Minshew, like having both Minshew and O'Connell, the way I've been looking at it, raises the floor of the quarterback play. Like they both have to be bad. If one of them's bad, if O'Connell starts and he's bad, Minshew's at least there, and I think gives you a floor of efficiency. He got Michael Pittman into the 3rd round. I mean, if Adams is going to keep dominating targets at the level he has. See, a part of the reason I think Sean would have Adams so low is he just thinks Brock Bowers.
He has him 33, by the way, so it's not as low as I was saying. Yeah,
and he thinks Brock Bowers is going to come in and get 700 targets in year 1. So there's no other target.
So does Adams, by the way. You see the quote?
What did he
calls
say?
Him BM for businessman.
Wow.
Let me get
Adam
this
should
up.
look up what BM also.
I know. I don't. I think it might be underhanded because he says he calls him BM. He goes, Adams has already given the team's first-round pick a nickname, BM, which is short for businessman. Quote, he doesn't care about anything else other than just locking in on football, and I can see it in his eyes, Adams said. I definitely know what he's about. I've seen the tape. He's a big, strong dude, and he's focused and driven. The sky's the limit for him.
There's another name in there. There's another quote in there that wasn't on the one you said, but he's also like, he won't laugh at any of my jokes. And I kind of think the BM thing is like because Bowers won't laugh at his jokes, he just named him BM. He's like,
yeah.
All right,
it could be a little game Adams is playing with himself where he's like, this guy actually is a piece of shit and he's going to steal my targets.
E-Surf says BM because he's number 2.
Oh. There you go. Let's hit why we're here. Let's talk about the DeVonta Smith one because I think that stood out to people.
Yeah.
My guess is because you just have so much Malik Neighbors. Is that part of it?
I have a ton of Malik Neighbors, and I wasn't taking Smith like a ton when he was in the late 3rd. And then he's been a riser. So this is like an interesting dynamic, I think, to keep in the back of your mind as we go through the rest of the draft season, right? It's like, it's not like Smith is rocketing up boards, but he's definitely risen substantially. Like you used to find him at the 3-4 turn. I know that's partly because running backs have all kind of fallen and wide receivers come up, but he used to go behind Metcalf. He used to go kind of more near Cup. And now it's like, you're seeing him, it's like him versus Diggs and stuff like
Diggs
that.
And more there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and more, that's another one, which I understand. Like I'm totally fine with it on one level, but then on the other hand, like I haven't been prioritizing him and he's rising. So I'm just like not getting him like ever. Like he's not clicking for me as like, oh, DeVonta Smith is here. That's unusual. I'm like, yeah, DeVonta Smith's always here and I never take him, but I don't want to be never taking him. I do think that in retrospect, I wish I took a lot more of him when he was at the 3-4 turn because it was so nice to be able to get Hurts. Now Hurts is tending to fall a little bit more to the mid-5th, but now when you take Smith, you're contending with, the AJ Brown drafter on the other side of the board might be the one to grab Hurts. So you don't necessarily have that element of it. Another thing is that I sometimes take Zay Flowers in the mid-3rd. This is the Jacob Sanderson trick. I pulled this off last night where you go Flowers, Lamar, and then Andrews comes back and you're able to get this was with Amon-Ra and Ayuk. So Amon-Ra, Ayuk, Flowers, and that could require taking him over DeVonta Smith if you want to try that. It might not. He might already be gone. But there's just like some other stuff that I've been doing and that I want to do, and Smith has just kind of gotten away from me. But I think he's a good pick. He's a good pick in the 3rd. So it's not one. This is another one that I'll be like the ETN one. I think I'm going to just kind of live with because otherwise like I'm going to be fading more Taylor or I don't really see how to get there on ETN. Pacheco, I do. I think I can prioritize him a little bit more at the 4-5 turn. Adams, I'll probably change it up a little bit. Smith, I kind of want to be a bit more aggressive on it and take him like over Diggs sometimes. Make sure I'm taking him over more. You could even talk to me into taking him like over Evans, who I don't have a lot of to begin with.
I'm curious for both. And Pat, I know this is a harder question for you because you run a site now where you guys sell rankings as part of your package. But part of like having these blind spots often come if you are drafting off the same ranks, even ranks that are getting adjusted, right? Whereas my guess, Pat, is if you did some drafts off of ADP, then Davante like pops up because he's just at the top of the queue more often when you have the 102. Whereas when you have him below like 4 spots in your ranks, it's just like, we'll just grab Malik Neighbors again.
Yeah, no, and we're working on a tool that will help you have ADP in there. So I've been actually doing that. I've been having ADP in there and then working on this tool that basically provides dynamic rankings. So I've been able to see, the rise a little bit more. And I think that's very helpful to be able to get a feel of what the actual ADP is doing. But yeah, I think it's like, I also think I am a little anchored even in my own mind to like the old ADP. If you did like I did 150 puppies, and so that puppy ADP is like still the real ADP to me in some ways. Is I got like it's in so many reps, and it's like
you literally have like war story PTSD from the puppy drafts. That's now you've tried to re-enter draft civilization, and you still are harboring those feelings from the puppy wars.
Oh, the receivers are gone.
Pete, I think that's a good point though, because as he was talking through it, I went and looked it up, and I'm right at even in the field on DeVonta again from my first batch of 41 teams that I have completed right now. But that's probably because I was taking him at his ADP at the 3-4 turn before he moved up. Like Pat's describing how he's moved up, and now it's a little trickier. I don't think I've taken him in the early third at all, but I got plenty of him when he was still going. I mean, the right amount. Like I don't think that I'm not scared of fading him, right? I have like I'm even to the field on him, but I've done all the other stuff you described too, taken a lot of Zay. And so I don't know. That's interesting. The other thing about this conversation with the Waddle and DeVonta Smith rising is that it makes me want to get into more T. Higgins. I don't know that he will rise because he had such a bad year relative to those guys. Like he got hurt and was like shitty, and now he's holding out. But it seems like that the whole thing I was saying about
his mortality.
It seems like that whole thing I was saying about the wide receiver 2s that were going at the late second last year. Those 3 guys got lumped together a lot. The other 2 have risen, and they started out slow, like a lot lower early in the offseason. They've risen. I bet T winds up at like 33 instead of 40. I bet he flips that 3-4 turn, and he's like where Pittman is by August. So I mean, I certainly like him ahead of George Pickens and Amari Cooper. That to me is a massive wide receiver drop off. No,
I agree. I mean, I like Christian Kirk a lot, and I think he could kind of come up there and form a little tier with Higgins, which is actually how we have it ranked. But yeah, I agree. I think there's a tier break, if not after Higgins, right after Higgins.
Since we're kind of living in these early rounds, do you want to talk about Pickens, and then we can tab over to Ben's full list here?
Yeah, I mean, Pickens is a little scary to me because he has the single week upside. He may have Justin Fields throwing him the ball at the end of the season. We know Fields has single week upside. We know Fields is willing to take shots downfield. If he throws for 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, Pickens gets credit for the touchdowns, and the interceptions don't matter. So it's like that volatility could be really good for a guy like George Pickens. And you have really no target competition, like at all. Like, there's talk of like so I don't know what happened here, but the dude for The Athletic wrote up who the wide receiver 2 was for them. And he mentioned Van Jefferson and every other dude on the roster except for Roman Wilson.
Yeah, Reg came into the Discord and posted that and said, "Can someone answer what the hell happened here?"
Yeah, I was like, where does anyone? I was like, you guys are more plugged in than me to the ship chasers. Can somebody tell me why Roman Wilson didn't get mentioned in this? And no one really had an answer.
So that particular writer's track record is not great. And so I think he may have forgotten.
Crazy.
I wouldn't rule that out, honestly. But I also think it's possible that he was just like viewing him as like a slot or something. I don't know. But it's not bullish, I guess. Maybe it's not.
I mean, I understand he's a bad beat writer, but how do you not remember when you're writing about the wide receiver 2, the day 2 pick from this draft?
I don't know.
It's insane.
So, but anyway, I mean, Roman Wilson kind of profiles as like more of like a speed slot type of. I don't know. He's like a real heavy target earner anyway. So the second target in the offense is probably like Pat Freiermuth. So it's just like, man, this dude could have like a big old target share, and we think he's pretty good. But at the same time, play volume. I mean, Arthur Smith. I just talked to Greg Branos from Coach Peak Index, and he was saying Arthur Smith gave us two numbers on the offense. He mentioned 1,100 plays and 550 rushes. So he's already committed to running half the time.
You want to know someone who's questioning his mortality?
We got a 50% run rate. I mean, not that we should be surprised, but he's doubling down, baby. So, it's like you got on the flip side, you get, 50% pass rate from Russell Wilson, and in an Arthur Smith offense, like that sounds miserable in the fourth round. And so it's hard for me to kind of prioritize Pickens. But as I'm passing on him, I am seeing him blow up in week 17 with Fields in it. It's scary.
Yeah. And he's a fun one because I feel like George Pickens is at the center of like an ADP culture war. Because I feel like it's pretty polarized on both sides. Like there's a lot of people who say he's like massively overvalued, and now there's like a lot of pushback that he's one of the best picks in this range. And so he's like kind of holding the line. Gretch, I wouldn't be surprised. Like you were talking about the Higgins thing, because like Dell flipped Higgins, which I think makes sense. I would not be surprised for Pickens to flip Higgins in ADP.
I haven't seen the Pickens steam. I've seen his ADP come up a little bit. Like I think he was at like 39 a minute ago, like in some of these draft rooms, and it was surprising to me. But who's on him? Like when you just said that, I was like, I am the one who thinks that he's massively overpriced. I don't want anything to do with Arthur Smith. You guys are talking about war stories from the puppy. I got war stories from the Falcons. Like this dude, they asked him about his wide receiver too. I tweeted this one out the other day, and he just went into like a whole discussion about like not even knowing anything. Like that's like in terms of the like questioning your existence. He's just like, we don't know. We're just, I don't know what our plays are going to be. I don't know anything. And then someone in the comments was like, this is telling you that George Pickens is their number one. And my reply to that was like, I don't think he knows George Pickens is his wide receiver one. I don't think he knows who's on the fucking team. I don't think this guy's like, he hasn't looked at them.
You ask him about Najee Harris, and he's like, oh, Najee, oh my God, this guy. Yeah. I'm going to give him 800 touches. And then you're like, what about Warren? And they're like, 800 more. He hasn't got
Cordero Patterson. We got him too.
Yeah, another 800.
I think it's just the combo. I think it's like three factors. You first get the Deontay Johnson vacated targets angle. All right, George Pickens. Then you get the box score watching. This guy went absolutely nuts in week 16. The thesis is already played out. And then the third thing that I'm now forgetting what I was going to say. Oh, kind of being like he could be the DJ Moore for Justin Fields, where it's like it's a little erratic, but then Justin Fields comes in and supports a few of these ceiling nuclear games. And then you're looking around in round 4 and you're like, all right, George Pickens it is. Like, I think that's the overall thought process.
That was actually a pretty good case, and I probably should draft him. I have not drafted him. He's not on my list because he's one that I'm like, I have conviction in this. Like, that's why I was intrigued by Pat's take there. But you just made a case. It makes me think that I probably should at least have some of him because the spike week thing, especially with Fields, I think that's a good call. It could happen. I just, man, like, do you guys really want to sign up for more Arthur Smith passing game shit? Like, I mean, my God.
I don't.
No. All right. We kind of talked about Josh Jacobs.
Yeah.
Gretches push us in a different kind of pocket of the draft board. So let's talk about these two rookie wide receivers, Ladd McConkey, Brian Thomas. I'm also curious why, or I know we ran into space issues. Is Keon Coleman part of this, or is he actually separpe from these two for you?
He's sort of part of it, but I've clicked him more
just
times.
feeding so many guys. We've got plus signs.
I know. I told you guys this. I'm a lot more idealistic. I've been getting this on my channel. That's like, how come you don't diversify as much as Pat and Pete? And I'm like, I mean, I can't structure.
How come you don't diversify as much as Pat? Should be a little bit of a red flag because I don't really diversify.
We need a meme that's like Sean, Ben, Pat, Pete, like, and it looks like cell phone bars for like diversity.
It's the evolution of man.
Sean, it's like the Chiba Inu dog that's just like all ripped. Yeah,
he's the one. He's the worst one that is definitely pulled in that direction.
But I don't know which direction it goes in. Is he the most evolved to the least?
So these wide receivers,
it's definitely the alpha play to just be like, these are my guys. I'm taking them every time. I know
the Chibu dog. He's the jacked one for sure.
Dude, actually, you guys are saying 10 players. It was 15. I had to cut it down. Like, relax.
I was like, Gretch, did you whittle this down yet?
Yeah, I tried really hard to cut it down. So the McConkey, Brian Thomas, Keon Coleman group, for me, it's really because I would probably just rank Deontay Johnson and Rashee Rice ahead of all of them straight up, and they go in the next round. JSN also, but I don't really want to get into that conversation on today's show necessarily. But
he's getting buzzed.
McConkey, Coleman, and Thomas all have some question marks in their profiles. At the same time, I don't want to be unexposed to him. Jacob Sanders, I tweeted out his Substack piece this week that he wrote this week and said it was my favorite piece that I've read this year.
Great piece.
You guys should all check it out. It was fantastic. One of the things he talked about is that this type of thing where if you're not on a guy like this, but like it used to be that we just drafted this type of player because of, the archetype that they are. You can't make the same type of archetype bets in 2024 when they're more expensive. It's a little trickier. This is a range, these three rookies, that I think they're too expensive for their profiles. And yet we all know that they're the wide range type of play that you want to make from an archetypical standpoint or archetypal. I don't know how to say that word.
Archetypal.
But like, yeah, I think that's right. They could be really low floors. They could be misses. We know Quentin Johnson exists. We know, Sky Moore exists. We know that guys that we've drafted as rookies with questionable profiles in these ranges have been basically total zeros in those rookie years sometimes. And that's tricky. At the same time, we also know that some of the biggest hits, that's why we target these types of things. So that's really the biggest one for me on this list is that group of rookie receivers. I've had a tough time with their prices all year. I love the double-digit round rookie running backs. I'm all over them. They're my highest exposure players. I'm getting other rookie receivers, but this is the pocket where I'm like, I want to have exposure to them in my builds, but I don't want to draft them here. Like I think they're bad picks. I think they're 10 spots overrated, basically. But yeah, I mean, it's
if you don't like Ladd in the 6th, they're gonna hate him in the 5th.
I know
he's rising, man. He's rising. So Ladd, I actually think Ladd and Thomas are different discussions because Ladd is, I think he's fine in the 6th given what else you're doing. Like you could certainly go away from receiver, but like compared to like Chris Godwin or whatever, like I don't like what receiver is it that you're going away from receiver and taking like Pitts and stuff, or is it that you're
definitely if Pitts is there, I'm definitely taking him. I'm taking a lot of Kittle. I've actually wound up with a lot of Kittle, and I end up taking him as my tight end too. I don't mind the 2 elite tight end thing. And if I can get Kittle at like the 68, 69 ADP in the later 6th round, like the mid to back half of the 6th round, I think that's a pretty huge piece to add over like making sure to get Ladd there. Like, so the tight
ends and Kittle, I was too low. I was just going to quietly kind of take more of them and not put them on my list. But those would be guys I want to get more of. And that's probably because I am taking Ladd, partly because I think he's going to rise, and partly because I think, he could be the number 1 wide receiver on the Chargers and has a pretty like pro-ready game, I think. Like if he can play, he's ready to play. You know what I mean?
I'm gonna ask you a question that is gonna make you squirm because you're painting the positive case for Ladd. But what do you think are the odds that Jalen Polk outscores Ladd McConkey this year?
Not non-zero. Like I don't know.
He's squirming.
I knew this would put him in a pretzel.
Maybe
this is my problem with these picks is that
20%, maybe 20%.
That's right.
And I don't know. Maybe I'm such a bear that I might even go a smidge higher than that. But yeah,
I think I would too. I like Ladd rebar on the stream I did with him and Daigle with over at Spike Week with Bime for. A week or so ago, made the case that if he's going to be their main slot guy in year 1, he's probably not going to be on the field in 3 receiver sets. They'll probably have 2 outside guys because they're
Roman called him a Swiss Army knife today. I don't think he's just a slot. He gets labeled. Denny Carter's been going on and on about how small he is, but he's not that small. I don't know. He's been there's like this narrative that I've been confused by.
And they're talking about
moving, like lost 30 pounds in the last.
They're talking about moving Quentin Johnson to the inside. And I just saw Matt Harmon tweet about this just a little bit ago, right before we came on the air, that would be good for Quentin Johnson. So maybe I'm wrong on that, but we know the Greg Roman offense is a tight end heavy offense. So they'll probably do some 2 tight end stuff. They got Disley and Hayden Hurst. Like that's what they always did with the Ravens, right? Their base was like mostly 2 tight end stuff. And so, like, if DJ Chark is playing, if Josh Palmer's playing, like, I don't know if McConkey's, he never was an every down receiver necessarily in college. I don't know if his route rates are going to be particularly high. I hope they are.
That would be the concern. That would be the concern. I think he's, I mean, it's somewhat injury related why he didn't, run routes at a super high rate, but I don't know that it was all that. When he was out there, he was insanely efficient. And so I think he's like a weirdly high upside profile.
But why is he going ahead of Deontay Johnson? I mean, I understand there is ceiling.
Because he plays with Justin Herbert.
High upside.
Yeah, because of the ceiling. Okay. He plays with Justin Herbert and Deontay plays with Bryce Young.
Ceiling? I know this is like we're just doing projections, but like what's his target ceiling? It's not 160 targets because I can damn well make a case that Deontay Johnson's is. I can make a case that's 180 for Deontay Johnson. Like,
yeah, he'll probably catch 90 of them.
It's just wild to me. I mean, like the price you got to pay for these guys is kind of high, but I mean, I get it. I want to get into a little bit more of them.
In some ways, the fact that Deontay Johnson is available, like the following round, is a reason to take the crack on McConkey. Like if you buy that there's a ceiling case with him, then to some extent we're flipping the profiles in the same way that we're flipping wide receivers ahead of running backs, and now you're getting 3rd round, 4th round running back profiles from 2020 in round 8 and 9. You're getting like I for this article I went back and like literally looked at Joe Mixon has such a better profile than 3rd and 4th round picks from 2020, and he goes in the 5-6. And there's dudes in the 7th round that would have gone in the 4th round just in 2020. So in the same way that we're flipping some of these wide receivers and pushing down those running back profiles as a group, I think we've taken this rookie profile and not entirely to your point on Polk, who I think is a smash, but you pull this upside up the board in concert, in tandem. And then there's dudes like Deontay who have fallen a little.
It's fair, but you don't have to take them both. You could just take Deontay. Like you could take Kittle and Deontay. Like Gobbler, I think
Kittle gives you upside for sure.
I think Gobbler's kind of kidding and serious here. This is sort of how I feel though. He goes, I regret that I clicked on Lad 10 picks past ADP. Never again. Hated my team after clicking Lad. Like a lot of times when I take Lad McConkey in that round, especially if I don't wind up getting Deontay in the next round because he gets pulled up, or Rashee Rice, who's the other guy I really love in the 7th round. And then I think
Rashee Rice is my highest drafted receiver.
He's mine too. Why is he still in the 7th round? That's a gift. Everyone draft as much Rashee Rice as you can get. But like those, like if I don't get those guys with McConkey, then at the end of the draft, I look back and I'm like, man, Lad McConkey's doing a lot of work as my wide receiver 4 here. And I didn't really get a wide receiver 5 that I feel good about. And I wish I would have just taken a good player. Like, I mean, it's a big upside swing. Is it that different than Jermaine Burton? Like the Jalen Poole thing?
I think it's very different than Jermaine Burton. He was an early 2nd round pick. The depth chart is barren. It's barren. I mean, it's Josh Palmer, Quentin Johnson.
Is it that different than Xavier Legette?
I mean, if Johnson's something, then yes, it definitely is. Like there's just like he could be the Johnson. That's the play here. It's that he's like,
sure.
I mean, this dude he gets open in the intermediate area. He gets he's good after the catch. He's not like a total zero as a deep threat. That's not really his game, but like he's a separation guy in an offense that kind of desperately needs that. And Herbert has generally liked with Keenan Allen. Like and everything that we've heard out of training camp is this guy is clicking with Herbert. He's repping with the ones. Hey, what do you think about his role? He's a Swiss Army knife. That sounds good. If you're worried he's going to be pure slot. He was an inside out player in college. He's 186 pounds. He's not like 165 or something. He could play on the outside to an extent.
He gets
especially since there's someone to block.
Stiff breeze.
He
gets blown over by a stiff breeze.
Yeah, well, that's Xavier Worthy, who I'm drafting a ton of.
Yeah,
but that is actually the concern with Worthy. But I don't know. I think to me he's a target because I think everything that you're not going to want to draft him for is only going to get become a bigger percent of the bet you're making. He's gonna the situation is gonna get more and more outsized in what's driving his ADP once we get to training camp.
I love the point you made, Pat, about the way we're kind of flipping the profiles in like 2024 drafts relative, because I was thinking about that in relation to guys like Tyler Lockett, Courtland Sutton, right? Like you could flip the Ladd and Keon Coleman where those guys go. And in previous years, it would have been you take Lockett, you take Courtland Sutton, you take those guys right there. And then you get the upside guys later. And it's like, you're going to get the same two guys on your team. It's just the market has agreed to take the one here and then wait to get the other guys.
But the difference is if Ladd's a miss, if Keon Coleman, if Brian Thomas are misses, then the right way to build will have been to just take the veterans. So, I mean,
the opportunity cost there is significant.
Yeah. That's true. Coleman, I find to be much more scary when I'm clicking than Ladd. Like Coleman is either going to work or like not work. Like he doesn't get separation. So like either
I agree he's a lower
floor,
catch, but I think the offensive volume for me is why he's less scary for me, where I'm like, if he hits, I at least know there's a ceiling. With McConkey, I'm like, he could hit, he could be good. And they might not throw enough and they might rotate enough that it's like 60 targets. Like I actually think that could happen if they rotate the routes enough. It'd be kind of gross. Like I think his upside's like 100 targets. Like he could have a good year and be Hunter Renfrow rookie season. And it's like, yeah, he was really efficient. Like it was awesome. 2+ yards per round run.
I think if you just offer me Hunter Renfrow's rookie season in the 6th, I think I might just take it.
He might.
Wide receiver's done, man. Give me Hunter Renfrow's. He had a pretty good year.
600 receiving yards. Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Just to make sure that we can get to all these, I have my slide here in a sec too. I do want to talk about Evan Engram because like when I posted my elite tight end video, that was like most of the comments would be like, what about Evan Engram? What about David Njoku? You know, like people wanting to elevate these guys to the elite tight end tier. So Gretch, talk about how you're thinking about Evan Engram as the tight end 8 off the board.
Yeah, somebody said a little earlier that I'm taking an anti-Jaguar stance, and I'll be quick about, because I have both Thomas and Engram here. I'll be quick about it and say that on Stealing Bananas a couple days ago, Sean and I did like our 3 shows for the week. The Jaguars one's probably not out, but we talked a lot about the Jaguars. I talked about how I actually really like them. I really like Trevor Lawrence's price. I want to be in on them. I am taking a lot of Kirk, which Pat mentioned he is. And Sean kind of pushed back and was like, he wants to be taking more Brian Thomas. And I was kind of like, man, I don't really think it's that big of a difference, but I like taking Kirk where he's going and not taking Brian Thomas where he's going, which doesn't make any goddamn sense because Kirk's going higher. But for some reason, it's the pockets and the prices for me, and that's the case with Engram as well, where he comes in not far behind Kittle, and I think he's a material drop-off. And then the guy that I want to take behind Kittle is Bowers. And so if I don't get the 2 early tight ends, then I wait and I take Bowers. So I just never draft Engram because it's like, well, what if I get a value on Bowers in this draft? And I've usually already taken one elite tight end. So why would I push Engram? I've taken him a couple times and then made it into Lawrence stacks. I think he's got a really good spot. We talked about this all offseason from the beginning when they brought in Gabe Davis, how that was going to, you know, the deep threats downfield, that's going to open up the stuff underneath for Kirk and Engram. And Ingram's playing tight end and cheaper than Kirk, but I'm drafting Kirk and I'm not drafting Engram. I think that's kind of weird. And then with the Brian Thomas stuff, where I've been coming around on him a little, I've talked a lot about how his target spread run profile was not good in college, even accounting for an elite teammate. It was bad still. He didn't earn volume. I have a hard time believing he's going to step into a team with multiple pro receivers that are like professional level receivers and immediately earn big volume. I do think the efficiency is going to be there because he's a super efficient player and it could really spike. And that's basically the bet. And the other side of I've been thinking about is that they brought in Gabe Davis as this pure deep threat to challenge the deep safeties, you know, the cover 2 shells, all that stuff. What if Thomas then does operate at all the depths? What if he's not running as many deep routes because it's really just Gabe Davis on most of these plays that's running the deep routes? We're starting to get intermediate crossers. We're starting to get underneath stuff. I still have a tough time being like his targets per out run. I don't know how it can be that great when in college it was like legitimately not first round worthy. It was all efficiency. But I mean, if they use him at all depths and they really try to make him like their alpha, which I mean, why wouldn't they? They drafted him in the first round. Kirk, Engram, and Gabe aren't really those profiles. I mean, I could see missing on Brian Thomas. I know why people are in on Brian Thomas. I still have a really hard time with a guy who never earned targets at a big, like, again, I just go back to like consistency down to downs matters so much at receiver. It's not just 17 touchdowns, which he had last year, which is a freaking huge number and does matter. But like, you got to be able to earn volume every snap and every down. And it's not just like Malik Neighbors. Like, you look at other good receivers that played with good receivers, and they had better numbers than Thomas did with Neighbors. So I don't know. I the point I'm trying to make is I actually like the Jaguars. I'm not out on the Jaguars. That's why I think these are scary fades, because I think their passing game could actually be kind of fun. They're just tricky clicks in their pockets for me.
The Brian Thomas, when I was doing research with what the Coach Speak Index has had out lately for that pod, I found this quote that he had shared from Press Taylor, their OC, on Brian Thomas. We're trying to get him to talk more, just ask more questions. He's not a big talker. For the most part, he kind of just nods and looks at you and then goes out there on the field and does it right.
That's how you talk about your small child.
But then he said he does it right.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. So it's like kind of this, it's this like, oh God, this is hard. Oh, is this actually extremely bullish? Like he's just just silently absorbs all information.
Those
and then
last few sentences turned the entire sentiment, or those last few words turned the entire sentiment, because that sounded bad.
It sounded really bad. But now it sounds like almost like he's like a football genius. He doesn't even need to ask questions. Yeah.
Let's see, Gretch, on the Zeke, Gus, Ekeler tier. I'm guessing those aren't going to be quite as surprising to people around here. I assume it's just you like other running back targets in that range.
Right. It's exactly right. The more exciting running backs right before them, and then when they become the top guys on the board, then I'm just going down to Charbonnet or definitely Kendre Miller, who's going to rise now with this latest news, or Marshawn Lloyd. I take those guys over these veterans all the time. I just don't know how you can click a veteran in that range when Lloyd and Kendre Miller should be going ahead of them, I think, just straight up. Charbonnet could arguably be going ahead of them too. Kendre Miller is the best value, I think, to me at running back, and now is probably going to go away. I'm bummed that we got Kamara holding out on the last day of minicamp, and like all these like tweets about, oh, he wants a new contract. Kendre Miller's a 21-year-old rookie last year, barely played. But was very good in week 18 when he did play a little bit. Jamal Williams had a 2.9 yards per carry. Alvin Kamara did not run particularly well. He's still going to play on the passing downs and stuff, but they added nothing. I think they are going to use their day 2 back in his age 22 season alongside Kamara this year. Like Jamal Williams is like the Miles Sanders of this backfield, and Kendre Miller is like the Jonathan Brooks. I mean, Alvin Kamara is more than Chuba Hubbard, but like, you have to think that he's a big part of their plans. Anyway, I don't know why I'm talking about Kendre Miller so much. The veterans are a little bit of a concern to me. I think Zeke could be a solid win rate player. I think Gus could be a solid win rate player. I play the Chargers through the 2 cheaper sides. I've been taking some Dobbins and definitely a ton of Vidal. And Ekeler, to me, like just the year before last, led the NFL in touchdowns, and he led the NFL in touchdowns the year before that. Like, he had one down year. He's not super old. He's a workout warrior. Like, what if Ekeler was just kind of banged up last year and he gets back to playing at a high level? We're all going to know.
I've been mixing him in.
I've started to have some cold sweats about Ekeler, of just like getting like the Josh Jacobs flashbacks of like, this guy was available in the 12th round and we came up with all these little excuses.
Yeah,
that's what I'm like. I'm afraid with Zeke and Gus too, frankly, because I think they could both be double-digit touchdown guys. And I'll look back on it and be like, I should have just mixed them in, but I don't want to mix them in, so I'm not, because I like the Kendre Miller profile so much.
I love it. That's how I feel about Ekeler right now. Like, I don't want to mix him in, so I actually am.
Gus, though,
way past 80.
At least with Gus, though, this is a guy who was like a 17th round pick last year, who ran incredibly hot on touchdowns and one of the better offenses in the league. You can regress those touchdowns a pretty good bit in this new spot, as opposed to Ekeler. We're talking about a former first-round pick last year who can do everything.
Yeah.
And and there's reasons to nitpick him. He was an awful rusher last year. Maybe Jaden Daniels doesn't throw the ball. Brian Robinson is good. But man, like, would it shock any of us if he's even like 80% of what he was last year and just like a total smash? Like, it wouldn't shock me.
And for the guys that do carry late into their career, I mean, it just seems like they're guys who love football and work out as hard as he does and all that stuff. You got to take care of your body. Your body starts to break down, but like if somebody's going to beat age a little bit, it's somebody who's going to like, I think Austin Ekeler might live in a gym. Like this dude, like he's constantly posting videos and stuff, and it's real. Like his body is like legitimately jacked. Like he works really hard on it. Obviously eats really well. That's the kind of stuff that's going to help you elongate your career a little bit, I think. So it wouldn't be that surprising if last year was just a little bit of an injury-prone year. He was not just the touchdowns, but really efficient both the 2 years prior. It's just one bad year. Like I look at his season, like he had 1,500 plus yards back-to-back seasons in 2021 and 2022. Still had 1,000 yards last year. Like,
yeah. His receiving efficiency is still okay. I think the one thing with Ekeler that's been tough for me is that when the big board opened, he was going way too high. Like we had generally the leg up rankings are tied to ADP a little bit, but his was not. We just, there was no tie. We were like, I severed the tie to ADP. It was like, he belongs in like, I don't know, like 125, like get him out of the 90s. Give me a break. But now he is at 125. Right. But he got there. But I'm still like, oh, gross. And I'm like, no, Pat, calm down. He's where really you think he should be now.
It's hard to rewire it. I remember when Chubb was falling and people were like, I'm seeing him fall so far he lands the 130 is the cutoff point. Someone said on one of my very first YouTube videos, and so I've been mentally doing that. His ADP's now 130. And I'm like, at what point do I take some Nick Chubb? Like,
I'm starting to think about Nick Chubb. And I'm the only person at Leg Up who's curious about taking Nick Chubb, which is why he's still very low. But I am curious.
This is a really interesting thought experiment with Ekeler of like, what is the actual contingent upside of Ekeler if Brian Robinson got hurt? Because it is, if you remove it, I do think that helps, right? If you even just separate the talent and it's just like, this is just pure opportunity. Brian Robinson's gone. Where are we taking Austin Ekeler?
Part of it is that I don't think I would project him to have a huge receiving role. It's like Jaden Daniels is going to be a pretty big scrambler early in his career, I think, where you get the mobile QB doesn't check down because he runs, unless he's just a little bit different in that regard than some of the other young mobile QBs. But typically speaking, it's one downfield read and then I'm taking off when you have the athleticism of Daniels. So part of it is like you don't necessarily want the passing down back in that offense. I do think that caps his upside some, but I mean he would go pretty high. I think he'd go quite a bit higher than this.
He'd go like near White range.
Yeah, I think he would go near DeAndre Swift.
Yeah,
that's kind of right there in that same range. Yeah,
that's what I was going to say. Yeah, you wouldn't take him in the 5th. So I mean, that's a fair point in terms of like, well, Brian Robinson's not hurt. So
and where would you take Marshawn Lloyd or Zach Charbonnet if Josh Jacobs or Kenneth Walker out? Now you're talking 3rd or 4th round.
I still don't think they would go that high because of how pricing, running back pricing is working right now. And I don't know that like Lloyd.
I think Sharps would because we saw
maybe Sharps would. Yeah, maybe.
But
Sharps
I agree,
would.
Lloyd would be maybe below.
Kendra Miller would go really high.
If Kamara got traded, Kendra Miller would go where Pacheco is going. I think.
It's exactly where I was gonna. Yeah, that's where he would go. He would flip Pacheco. That's how I get more Pacheco.
All right.
What are yours, Pete? I don't have it. Yeah. The only other one with Drake May is I keep telling myself that Brissett's going to start too much, and I'm really worried. When Pat's like all in on this QB profile, and I'm out here like, what if he doesn't start enough teams? I got to take some of them.
Keep your eye on it, man, because we're getting some reports.
I saw a good report the other day, and that's why he made this list. I was like, I got to start drafting some Drake May. That's going to come up. I'm going to get that price up.
All right.
I feel like the most interesting one on my list, and this one surprised me when I was reviewing, because I've been reviewing my exposures this week for that video I made on the Deposit Kingdom, and I also have a piece that just published on Fantasy Life, kind of going through my actual player exposures through 50. And I remember making a bull case for CJ Stroud on Ship Chasing like a couple months ago or a month ago, like where I was like, I don't think he's too pricey. And then I went and looked and I have 2% CJ Stroud. And I was like, what the fuck? Like that like terrified me to the point where I was like, I do not want 2% CJ Stroud. I would like to be like even at least and probably slightly overweight. How have you guys been getting to Stroud at all in your builds?
I think I was lower than I thought I would be when I looked at it too. I'm kind of curious.
I'm at 11%. So,
okay, that's
yeah.
much healthier. Yeah.
Yeah.
I am at, through my finished drafts, 7.3 in. So then I've taken him in a couple of the super flex ones, which is a different thing, but 7.3 in the typical 1 QB BBMs and stuff like that, and the puppies.
This is partly why I'm low on like the Pacheco type stuff, because I have been willing to take Stroud in the 5th with Nico. I've done stuff where I've taken Nico Diggs and set up a Stroud double. Sometimes I grab Andrews in the 4th, and then I'll take Lamar or Stroud when they come back. But I'm taking Stroud there. So I've tried to like stack that game in some interesting ways, which has helped me keep on, like, that helped me get some Stroud early. And then Stroud's falling, man. You can get him paired with Tank Dell in the 6th. You push him around that turn. No one's taking unstacked Stroud. I mean, some people do, but you gotta let them hang themselves there. So you take with Tank Dell, you can get him in the 6th. I mean, and occasionally he'll come back past Dell to Diggs if you're in the mid 6th.
I just did the math on my eliminator and superflex. I'm at 10% across the 3 different formats.
That's not bad.
I'm okay with that. Yeah.
I think what happened is I was grabbing so much Tank Dell in the 4th round early, and this was back when the Nico and Stephon Diggs drafters weren't letting him come back to the late 5th. And I just anecdotally, I have not been getting as much Tank Dell lately, as he's now almost a permanent fixture of the 3rd round, at least in all my stream drafts. Yeah. And so now it's like I didn't get CJ Stroud before he was falling on all my Tank Dell teams. Now I'm not getting Tank Dell. And so I'm not, if I'm taking Diggs or Nico, then I'm not pulling the trigger on Stroud in the early 5th, basically. And so it's just like boxed me out of it in a way that was unintentional and scary. I'm terrified.
I love to take him at the 4-5 though, when you get either Nico or Diggs or both of the 2-3. We've talked about that a little bit. I know you guys, we've talked about the Jackson thing too, but I mean, I think if Stroud really goes off, I like Tank a lot. But man, I kind of feel like he's not the key to their passing game this year, because I think he's going to be sort of that ancillary third piece that is good and very efficient and probably correlates to some of Stroud's spike weeks in a good way. But like the full season upside to me is like either Nico or Diggs or both is really going off. I don't know. This is the way that I view it. So I didn't realize Stroud's going 58 now. He's fallen quite a bit. He was going at the 4-5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The quarterbacks in general are falling. I think it's just like no one is safe from these wide receiver prices. Like it is hard to make detours for anything. It's not about the running back. Guess what? It never was about the running backs. It was always about the receivers. This whole thing is just about having enough wide receiver firepower, and the market's just slowly, more and more people are just refusing to get locked out. And it's becoming table stakes. Like you don't just having like 3 wide receivers through 5 rounds mean that you're going to win anything. No, but it's like, if you don't, you might be in real trouble.
The other thing that happened in this range is as soon as Pete made that tight end video, every freaking good tight end was going 5 picks. My slows were right in those rounds, and every good tight end started going 5 picks before.
I wrote about it. Madison wrote about it. Jacob wrote about it.
Yeah.
ADP's stale as hell. Pete gets a video.
Pete makes one video, and everyone's like, "God damn it, I got to take him a round."
Tight ends are the key to everything.
If the smooth exposure bros doing it, fine.
I wrote in April that Trey McBride and Sam Laporta should be 2nd round picks. That the ADP was that broken on the elite tight ends. No one gave a shit for 2 months.
This draft, Gretch, this is before you became a slow draft influencer. Though.
That's true.
Maybe now when you're on the slow drafts, everyone's like, "What would Gretch do? What would Gretch do?" We can do one more. I feel like we already did Pacheco. Amari is the same thing as the Pickens conversation. Basically, always grabbing elite tight ends there. Marquise Brown is just like, I prefer Xavier Worthy to him straight up, and he now goes after him. So it's just like,
I'm not afraid of that. That one's an intentional one for me. I'm fading. This is a nuts price to me. I don't understand.
So this is why I think it's scary. If you get the 2 bear scenarios, like it's not hard to say, okay, Rashee Rice gets a big suspension. Travis Kelce hits the age cliff, and Xavier Worthy just like isn't ready for NFL ball. Like there's scenarios where that to Gretch's point that he wrote in his Substack with the perfect storm stuff, like a couple of these guys are mispriced. And while I think it's the least likely of the ways that goes, like there are ways that breaks, and Marquise Brown just has to be a better version of Sky Moore and MVS. And I think he's up to that challenge.
He's probably the safest of all of the bets, right? He has the fewest, like you just named all the red flags for the other three. Like Marquise Brown's probably going to play it, run a lot of routes this year and score. Right.
I think so. It was pretty scary. I think you could have turned off the lights and gotten the flashlight up under the chin. That if you told me that same
4% exposure play,
yeah, I would have put on my 4% exposure because that was already got me a little. That was a pretty scary story.
Davis was on such life tilt during Swolecast's draft yesterday that in the 4th, 5th, and 6th round he went. I think he went Kelsey or no, he went Worthy, Marquise Brown, and Rashee Rice without Mahomes.
And he let the guy try to push Rice past him on the turn who had Mahomes. And he goes, if you wanted Rice, you should have taken him first.
I just had to pull it up because Davis was just on one yesterday. I just love this. Hollywood at 48, Xavier at 49, Rashee Rice at 72 with no. I was like, Davis, just take Mahomes at pick 49, and then you get the double stack.
That's 12 picks ahead of ADP Unworthy and like 6 ahead on Rashee Rice. Just a really, I mean, I take a lot of teams with 2 Kansas City receivers.
Me too. I honestly do too.
I don't do 3 and all ahead of ADP.
Yeah.
But he played it right. He got Jaden Daniels. That is the way you play it.
The thing about Hollywood that's interesting is we were talking through that. Like I was saying, he might be the safest, but I think he's also the lowest ceiling. If Worthy hits, he hits in a bigger way. If Rice is out there, he hits in a bigger way. If Kelsey actually runs a lot of routes, he hits in a bigger way. And so it's sort of like he is contingent on everyone else not hitting their ceilings. And then he has to be the dude and will be. But like when I do the 2 KC receivers, I'm usually doing like Worthy and Rice together. And I'm like, this is like, they're both smashing at the same time because they're kind of doing complementary things. I guess I would find that harder to do with Brown. Brown to me is kind of a bet on what you said, Pete. The other guy's kind of not hitting, which can happen, but they all have some risk to them. But I don't know. It's like probably not good for the Kansas City offense, while it would be good for Marquise Brown.
Right.
Yeah. And someone's asked that they don't understand the Bear case. It's like he was Lamar's best receiver. Like, yeah, in 2020. Like literally when I just pulled up like all the ancient ADP things that we used to do. We used to take Le'Veon Bell.
Rookie year, Pat, when we were in a bar in Las Vegas watching Red Zone with my buddy Cam, and he was a rookie, and he had like 2 touchdowns his opening game against the Dolphins.
Game. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, holy shit, I did not draft enough of this guy.
Exactly. That Marquise Brown, then went on and had another strong season in 2020, and then he fell off, got traded after that year, and had 2 bad years with the Cardinals. Players don't like. I know he's only 26. He's 27. And he turns. I just took the guy's word for it. That he's 26. He's 27. And he just turned 27. I thought he's 27, turning 28 in the month.
I did this with a guy in my comments told me that Zach Ertz got paid $5 million, and then I repeated it on a pod, and then I looked it up, and I was like, this guy lied to me. It was only $3 million. And he sent me a note that like the next day on a YouTube comment was like, sorry, I told you that Zach Ertz got paid $5 million. And I was like, you could have just like let that go. I would have never remembered who it is, but now you got to wear this like a scarlet letter. I'm never gonna forget it was you.
That sounds like an ADP chasing testimonial where people start like parroting things Davis says on the show, and then they just get like fact checked by someone else.
So good. That was so good. So he just turned 27, but like generally, like when non-young players start falling off in efficiency, we should stop citing their age as if they're still like in their primes, because players in their primes perform like they're in their primes. When players start falling off in efficiency and they're not like 24, it's not one weird injury riddled year or something. I don't think we want to. Oh, he's only 27. He'll be fine. That can be dangerous.
Yep.
I'm looking at that game now that you guys were talking about. 59-10. Marquise Brown in the first quarter of his first NFL game, a 47-yard TD and an 83-yard TD. They put up a 59 spot. Do you guys remember? I remember that was like, oh, Lamar's winning.
They were pulling starters at the end of the first game, week 1.
The things you could have traded Marquise Brown for after I don't know who was the 101 and 102 that year, but I'm pretty sure you could have got them for Marquise Brown after that week.
They looked so unstoppable in that game. Lamar Jackson, 17 for 20, only 20 passes, 324, 5 touchdowns, 5 TDs.
I bet you could have gotten AJ Brown in a first for Marquise Brown after that game.
Yeah.
No joke.
Real quick, because people are asking about my AJ Brown one. So this is because I've been taking Garrett Wilson ahead of AJ Brown. And when I was doing my exposure review, I'm like a proponent of just taking the best player available by ADP in round 1 mostly, and having exposure and building out around all these guys. That was the one spot I've been IKBing. And I was looking at like the 4% AJ Brown and 18% Garrett Wilson. And I'm like, I'm just going to get back to drafting AJ Brown when he's top available. I don't know if I have that degree of confidence, especially now that Rodgers is fucking missing. Like literally no one knows where he is. I'm about tired of this Aaron Rodgers bullshit myself, and I'm going to get back on the AJ Brown train, I think.
The funniest thing so this was I think is a legit explanation, but Connor Hughes, Jets beat writer, tweeted out this long thing saying the absence is technically unexcused because you can't excuse a non-injury related absence for minicamp, and it's mandatory, and he's not here, so it's an unexcused absence. But he said basically months ago that he wasn't going to be there. He's been here the entire offseason. He has participated in every single thing. The Jets knew he wasn't going to be here for this. They're not concerned about it. I don't know why everyone else is concerned about it. And then he went on for another paragraph. And Rotopat just quote tweets it and goes, "Always a great sign when you need a 3-paragraph explainer on why your quarterback isn't in minicamp."
Well, they called it an unexcused absence, and then Robert Saleh goes, "But we're on the same page." And it's like clearly you're on the same page with this. But that one scares me a little bit. Gretch, where are you at on AJ Brown?
I mean, I'm terrified of all the Aaron Rodgers stuff. I'll tell you that. I've been taking a lot of Garrett Wilson too, and I'm probably at the 4% security blanket on AJ Brown. I would describe exactly what you said in the first round stuff, and probably my exposures are the same, where I try to get a little bit of exposure to all. And if I get too high on one or the other, then like I was all excited to take Tyreek Hill 101. I was saying in some drafts early on, like I thought he should be going 101, and I've stopped. Like I'm taking CeeDee Lamb and I'm taking Christian McCaffrey. Like I don't want to not be drafting those guys just because I think Tyreek Hill is a good play. Like so. I'm drafting everyone I can as balanced as I can. The other guy that I noticed I was low on was Breece Hall, because I've been so excited on Bijan. We've talked a little bit about it.
I'm a little nervous on Bijan because I'm so excited on Breece Hall.
I'm sure. And so I'm trying to get all the receivers. I haven't got enough Brown. I mean, I do think that Garrett Wilson's a better pick, but every single you can't take Brown after 112. And so I want to take some AJ Brown, and so I'm trying to take some. And if Garrett Wilson's ever off the board, then I take AJ Brown, right? Like, and that happens sometimes. So
Pete, you mentioned getting to 18%, bro. Because you guys are talking about how you want to even this out. I have 7% AJ Brown and 8% Garrett Wilson, and I'm nervous I don't have enough Wilson. So I would say be careful. Don't ease off too much, because you can get. It's not a fade, but I want to be overweight Wilson. But how are you getting overweight Wilson? Are you taking him over Puka sometimes? Like I couldn't. I don't have 15%. I have 15% of the combined two, because Wilson's never falling to me. Like I'm never seeing Wilson at like 202 or something like that.
Yeah, I can show you the other reason. And so shout out to Michael Dubner has that's my game stacker. Where's my exposures here? He has with his free tracker for best ball, you can see where your picks have come from. And why am I struggling to find this screenshot right now? But I have a ton of 110 basically in drafts, which is just ended up. And I was telling you guys in our chat, I have 2% CeeDee Lamb because I've only gotten 2 102s through 50 drafts. Wow. So you do get weird quirks like that are going to funnel you to stuff that you're not necessarily here we go, where you're not actually trying to do that in a draft. So you can see my number 10, I have 14%, 10 and 10%, 11. So almost a fourth of my drafts have been from like the Garrett Wilson stuff.
Okay. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like, God damn, you must be.
And then I have a ton of Justin Jefferson because 16% of my drafts have been from the 6.
That's
and then there's my 4%, only 2 drafts from the 2. So it's like even trying to do it, like the randomization gods won't necessarily be in your favor.
That's interesting.
The chat is not loving Garrett Wilson. I mean, the way I was agreeing with you, Pete, was that I definitely am. Wilson's the problem for me getting AJ Brown. I'm taking a ton of him too. I think the chat needs to come around on Garrett Wilson. They're saying that you've taken a lot of him, Pat. I've taken Wilson over Breece in a number of drafts. I mean, think he's a better pick.
I think Breece is a better pick, but I'm not gonna that's not one I would go to the mat on. Like he keeps you on track structurally, and he's awesome. So okay, do it. I think Puka's a better pick. Is part of the problem for me is that I mean Puka just had the best rookie wide receiver season ever. Is in a completely stable situation. Genius head coach. I mean, literally one of the best offenses designed in the league, and one that's specifically designed for him and Kupp. I think having Kupp there helps. It's going to be super concentrated between the two of them. Demarcus Robinson will get some, right? But the tight end just got kind of pulled out with Higbee getting hurt. So it's very, very hyper concentrated. They don't even throw that much to Kyron.
Have you heard about Colby Parkinson? Apparently,
there's a Davis Allen camp still that he might actually be the guy. So anyway, I'm just man, it would be that to me is hey, remember when the guy had the best rookie wide receiver season of all time, and then we ran it back and we were I'm not that interested at 108. Why? That seems dumb. So I'm just taking my Puka. Yeah. But it's leaving me where, okay, now it has to come from AJ Brown, which I think is totally fine to pull some from AJ Brown and go to Wilson, but it's not that much I can even pull. Honestly, I just wish Wilson fell sometimes. I really wish he fell to the 202, 203. That would be such a gift. And he just never ever does.
It's just that clear delineation between pick 12 to pick 13. And people just are I'm not I don't want to take 2 second-round picks. Is basically what people say. They're I want at least my one.
And if someone falls, it's Gibbs. Gibbs is the one that you can get at 203 or 204 sometimes.
Right.
At least I've seen. Yeah. It's not one of the receivers.
I was just at the 112, and I took Drake Harrison because I was I have a feeling that this room might be pretty wide receiver heavy, and in the whatever.
So you let Gibbs go,
mini Schnauzer. Yeah.
That's so. It's really after the 111. You're not. I mean, the receivers are all done. You're not going to get them to get around to 202. It's just if Gibbs does go in the first 11 picks, then AJ Brown's going at the turn, or Garrett Wilson's going at the turn.
Exactly,
they're definitely going at the turn.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I got to run. This was very fun. I'll post the screenshots of our fades again. These are guys we would like to get more of. These are not players we hate. We didn't do that. The 10 players we hate. We could do that video for you. Then you could
maybe we should
get mad at us. This was a more loving fade list, I would say. Like I said, I got randomizer tonight with Jacob Sanderson. Also, check out that video on the Deposit Kingdom channel, 10 takeaways after 50 drafts. Been getting some good feedback on that. Gretch, what do you got going on this week? A bunch of slow drafts over on the new Stealing Signals channel. Anything else?
That's been the big thing. The Stealing Bananas episodes are coming. I did a quick post on the newsletter the other day. That was a mailbag on Monday. Hit on some questions on structural stuff. Why I get a little bit more concentrated on my stuff was a big question. You can find that at the Substack, bengresh.substack.com. That one free in front of the paywall. So go check that out. The slow draft streams, did one on Wednesday morning, and we'll probably do another on Saturday morning. So see you then.
Love it. Oh, another announcement relevant to all of us. So I'm traveling next week. I think Gretch is traveling. What we're going to do, Gretch is going to join Pat and I on Best Ball Breakfast. So there's not going to be a ship chasing show next Thursday, but you can get ship chasing on my channel at noon Eastern on Monday. The trio of us will draft a Best Ball Mania team. And then Pat, I assume you guys will have ADP chasing as usual, just no Thursday ship chasing show.
I also just thought of something before Pat says his plugs. Pete, Saturday's your birthday, right?
It is.
Everybody bothered Pete. I remember it's 10 days before mine from you famously saying you could be my dad last year. So mine's coming up. Pete's on Saturday. Everybody tweet at him on Saturday. And
I will say last year, what's become like a fun thing because my birthdays, it was like, whatever it was 4 years ago. I remember it was a night where we had Club Top Shot. And that was the Tuesday. Then the Wednesday was the ship chasing. We had Liam on where I said to his dad. And then last year, Gretchen and I did a randomizer after dark on a Friday. This year, it's falling on a Saturday. But I was like, who can I book to have a fun night of drinking beers with? So Denny Carter is going to be my best ball after dark guest. We're going to do that on Friday night because I'm doing something with Lauren on Saturday. But if you want to just have some beers and watch me and Denny shoot the shit, that'll be tomorrow night. But thank you, Gretchen. I appreciate that. Pat, what do you got going on? This tool you keep teasing here. It was revealed in the Discord the other day, right?
Yeah, we did a sneak preview in the Discord of this dynamic rankings tool that we are going to be launching here imminently, I would say. It won't be today. But we're working to get kind of we're throwing a bunch of drafts at it and seeing if it can handle the volume that we're hoping to get. So when we do launch it, it's going to be initially open to all Legendary Upside subscribers. It'll eventually live under a new tier that we're going to launch. Details on that when we actually launch it, but you'll get a chance to test it out for like a few days as a Legendary Upside subscriber. So be on the lookout for that. I'll get a post out. We'll get Discord. You won't miss it, but be aware that that's coming pretty soon. I also have a post on the running backs that I talked about. That'll be out later today. And I have a pod on the Legendary Upside feed coming out later today with Greg Branos, who runs Coach Speak Index. Started that account, awesome account. And we just kind of like went through, it was a really fun pod where we went through and talked about some of the situations and kind of weaved in kind of how he sees like what to look for when you're absorbing and trying to, make some sense of these coach quotes and which coaches we can trust and which coaches we really enjoy. And then also which backfields are going to be ones we want to invest in and that kind of stuff. So lots of actionable stuff and lots of fun stuff in that one.
That's awesome. Yeah. Greg's been doing great work with that account over there. All right. Thank you guys for hanging out. Come join us tonight on the randomizer. I was just taking a peek at some of the prompts for Jacob tonight. It's going to be a super fun time. And check out ADP chasing from this week. I saw someone in here became a new YouTube member. If you guys want to hop in the Discord, I will just say the ship chasing Discord has been firing lately. I don't always get to hop in there and join the conversation, but I do get my strolls in and very entertaining.
It's been fun. It's been fun.
You guys are the best. Have a good week. We'll see you guys on Monday.